There were 7 scars on her back, a circle unfinished, and one line burned into a scrap of paper, "Do not complete the circle." I wasn't looking for trouble when I brought her home. I just thought, maybe I could help. Give a little girl a warm meal, a soft bed, a quiet place to sleep. I didn't know I was bringing home the only survivor of something ancient, something people don't talk about in daylight. She didn't have a name. At the shelter, they called her Jane Doe, the name they use when no one knows where you're from, when no one's even looking for you. She was maybe 6, small, silent, her eyes way too still for a child. I called her Amma. I don't know why, it just came to me. Later, I found out that in Sanskrit, Amma means mother. Weird, right? The first night I tucked her in, sat beside her bed. She didn't say a word. But just before falling asleep, she leaned into my shoulder and whispered something. One line, soft, barely audible. Don't let them finish it. I thought she meant a dream, a nightmare maybe. 3 days later, I decided to give her a bath. Warm water, lavender oil, a little yellow duck by the faucet. I wanted her to feel safe. She didn't react, not until I lifted her shirt. That's when I saw them. 7 scars, raised, shaped, burned into her skin like ancient symbols. Some looked like stars, others like eyes that had been scratched out. And in the center, a broken circle. I reached out to touch it. She stepped back. Then from inside her sleeve, she pulled a small folded piece of paper scorched at the edges. Just 5 words written in shaky ink. Do not complete the circle. That's when I knew this child hadn't just been hurt. She'd been marked. I kept that piece of paper for a long time. The ink was smudged, the edges burnt, but that message stayed with me like a warning whispered into my bones. Do not complete the circle. From that night on, I started watching Amma differently. She wasn't like other kids. She didn't laugh, didn't cry, didn't respond to music cartoons or even my cat rubbing against her legs. But one thing stood out more than anything. She hated white light. Anytime the kitchen light flicked on, she'd freeze. Then she'd start whispering numbers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I asked her where she learned that. She just looked away. At night, I started hearing her talking in her sleep. Whispers, not English. Not any language I could recognize. Soft, rhythmic, like chanting. One morning, I walked past her room and stopped cold. The walls were covered in drawings, symbols in black charcoal circles, inside circles, twisted shapes I'd never seen. Some looked like ancient script, others like something trying to be forgotten. She stood in the middle of it all, charcoal dust on her fingers, expressionless. That's when I knew this wasn't trauma. This was something older. I sent a photo of the scars and the symbols to a friend of mine, Dr. Rubin, a retired professor of symbology. He called me back 2 days later. His voice was shaking. Karen, where did you find this child? I told him everything, the shelter, the warehouse, the scars. He went silent for a moment. These symbols match those found in texts associated with a banned cult. They called themselves the Children of the Flame. They believed that children were the key to opening a gate between worlds. Through fire. I didn't say a word. He continued slower now. In 2017, a remote farm in Louisiana burned to the ground. 7 children disappeared, no survivors. At least that's what the official reports say. I sat there staring at Amma's room. Amma came from Louisiana. I dug through the files from the shelter. She had been found wandering near a condemned warehouse, barefoot, covered in ash. Only one item with her, a cloth pouch. I had never looked inside. That night after she was asleep, I opened it. Inside were 3 things. A smooth black stone the size of a plum, a rusted iron ring, and a child's charcoal drawing 7 children standing around a fire. One in the center, lying down. I couldn't breathe. She wasn't a random child. She was the center of whatever this was, and somehow she had lived. One night I passed by her door and heard her whisper again. I pressed my ear to the wood. Don't finish the circle, don't let the light in. I stepped back. I opened my laptop and reread the last line of Dr. Rubin's email. They believed in a final rite called the 7th flame. 6 children form a circle. The 7th lies in the center, the vessel. If the ritual is interrupted, the vessel carries the mark. And whatever they tried to awaken stays unfinished until the circle is complete. I looked back at Amma's sleeping form. On her back, the circle was still open, and something told me that was the only reason we were still safe. That night I locked her door, not because I was afraid of her, but because I was starting to be afraid of whatever might be watching through her. But locks didn't matter. I woke up at exactly 3:00 a.m. There was singing, not music, not words, something between a lullaby and a ritual. I slipped out of bed and crept down the hallway. Her door was wide open. I ran. Out back under a sickle moon, Amma stood barefoot on the lawn, still, eyes closed. She had drawn a circle of ash on the ground. Perfect. 6 small stones around it, and she was in the center. Her lips moved, whispering something too old to be translated. The wind didn't blow, but the air pulsed like it was holding its breath. I shouted her name. She didn't move. So I stepped into the circle, and everything stopped. No wind, no sound, even the trees around us stilled. She opened her eyes. They were pitch black. No whites, no pupils, just endless dark. Then she spoke, but it wasn't her voice. 6 have gone. 1 remains. The survivor is the gate, but the new blood, the mother of none, she can end it, or birth it. I froze. The new blood, was that me? Amma blinked. Her knees buckled. She collapsed. I ran to her. Her body was ice cold. I carried her inside, wrapped her in blankets, rocked her in my arms. She didn't speak. She didn't cry. She just whispered one word. Sorry. The next morning I called Dr. Rubin. When he heard what happened, he didn't hesitate. You need to return to the site, he said. The original one. The fire. The ritual grounds. So that evening I packed a bag. 3 hours later I stood on a patch of scorched earth outside of Baton Rouge. No signs, no fences, just dead trees, cracked soil, and silence. Amma stayed in the car asleep. I stood alone. I brought with me the stone, the ring, the drawing, and a bit of her ash circle from the backyard. I laid them all down, and then I burned them. Not as part of a ritual, but to destroy what remained. As the fire caught, I whispered something of my own. You don't get her. You don't get anyone else. When the last ember faded, it felt like the ground exhaled. I went back to the car. Amma was still asleep. But that night she didn't whisper. She just breathed. Like a child. Like a survivor? That night, Amma didn't whisper. She didn't chant. She didn't draw symbols on the walls. She didn't count backwards when the light came on. She just slept. Like a child. Like someone who had finally been allowed to rest. I watched her breathe. Not in fear, but in peace. And for the first time in weeks, I slept too. A few days later, I framed that old piece of paper. The one that said, "Do not complete the circle." I hung it on the wall. Right next to the very first photo I ever took of Amma smiling. Not to remember what she went through, but to remember that she came through it. Not as a vessel, not as a sacrifice, not as something broken, but as a child still standing. These days, the only circle that matters to us is the one we sit in on the kitchen rug when we make pancakes on Sunday mornings, or braid her hair after a bath, or read picture books with the cat curled up beside us. No chanting, no fire, just laughter. She is not a symbol. She is not a gate. She is my daughter. And she's free.